Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jesse Turisky. I'm the president and CEO of the Autism Society of Pittsburgh. I wanted to talk about the intersection of disability and the criminal justice system. Our first speaker today is Russell Lehman. Russell is a motivational speaker and a poet who also happens to be on the spectrum. He also serves in leadership positions at the ARC of the U.S., Autism Society of America, and the National Association of Developmental Disabilities Councils. Russell Lehman. Take it away, Russell.
Hello, everyone. I will be sharing my screen with you today, so I will pull that up. I do want to thank, first of all, the ARC, the National DD Council, and the other sponsors of this all-important event. And it's always great to be here as a speaker or attendee. And with that, I will start my PowerPoint. So I'm a motivational speaker and poet who happens to have not only autism, but several mental illnesses. And this is my social media and website. I do a lot of educating and training. So if you want to take a screenshot of this for general awareness and continued awareness, go for it. I have 12 slides and I have 10 minutes, and I think I can get through this. And if I were with you in person, I would ask you guys, and you guys would hopefully say yes back to me. But obviously it's virtual, so I will say yes for you all. Now, without telling you my whole story, this picture kind of gives you a glimpse of how far I've come and continue to go. There's been a lot of change in my life. Personally, professionally, externally, existentially. Change is hard. Change is difficult. Change is scary. The philosopher Heraclitus said that the only constant in life is change. And change is perhaps the vehicle for us all to become a better people. Now, I preface my talk with the word change because we need drastic change in our criminal justice system. And not just change of the foundation and the structure of the system, but change to the people it serves as well, and that many times doesn't serve. So as I said, I have autism and a lot of mental illnesses. But I always say, whether I'm training mental health professionals or first responders or teachers or just a random Joe, is what you do not see is much more important than what you do see. Because this is what people see when they see me, right? You would never think I had multiple disabilities. This is what you do not see. And I put these diagnoses in the form of a twisted highway because oftentimes that's how my brain feels. And this is all going on the inside, no matter how I'm acting on the outside. So I recently wrote an article for Psychology Today on this matter. And if you want to take a screenshot of this again, you can probably Google it later and find it. But I will read you an excerpt of this article right now. As a white middle-class male, I have many variable reasons not to fear interactions with the police. However, as a white middle-class male with autism and many mental health struggles, I have a multitude of validations behind my fears that at certain times far outweigh my societal privileges. I've trained first responders in the past, from K-9 units to firefighters to hostage negotiators. And when I describe to them the worst of my meltdowns, panic attacks, and breakdowns, which can at times conjure an optical illusion of where I come across as a menacingly violent individual due to the intense adrenaline and testosterone of being in fight or flight mode, I pose to them this simple question. What would be your initial thought if you came upon a person acting in a manner such as this? And one time they said, I would think you were high on drugs. And I can see that. But then I followed up and I asked them, okay, you think I'm high on drugs? Then I assume you'd give me a command. What would happen if I did not respond to your command? And they sometimes say they may have to pull their gun. Sorry. Getting the hang of these first rules. They may have to pull my gun. And let me tell you, I've punched a hole in the wall of an airport terminal. I've hurled rocks in the middle of a street. I've cursed at the top of my lungs while pounding my chest like an animal in public. And I've had many close encounters with police or security guards when I'm having a meltdown, panic attack, or just a breakdown. And if I had been alone in these situations, had it not been for my family member or a colleague that was there with me to intervene, the biggest fear of my life might have occurred, being killed by police. Killed by police not because I am a violent person or I want to do bad or not comply with their orders, but because oftentimes I am just in pain. I'm in pain, and so are many others out there. And just because we can't see what they're feeling on the inside, we should not take their behavior at face value. Now, if it is one thing that can maybe all bring us together in the end, one thing we all have in common is that we all struggle. And when you hold a position of power, it is no longer beneficial to any community to lead with that power. What we need now is compassion, understanding, empathy, kindness. Use your power as a platform for benevolence. Now, on the other side, police need to know what they're getting into, right? With regards to that Chicago shooting that just happened with Adam, you can tell the cop shot him and then he was like, oh my God, what did I just do? And I'm not going to say whether that shooting was justified or not. I don't know yet. But police need to know what they're getting into. And they need to know that they are giving up their right to fear for their life the minute they put on that uniform. Because oftentimes these shootings are because they're scared and they think they say, I was in fear for my life. But they gave up that right. They knew what they were getting into. That is literally part of what they're signing up to do, is be in fear for their life, for the greater good, which I applaud them for. But they need to realize that's what they're signing up for. And people don't just do bad things for the sake of doing bad things. There's always a reason behind it. There's always an emotion. There's always an impetus and a catalyst. And if I had more time, I would get into a whole philosophical treatise on the banality of evil by Hannah Arendt, the German philosopher, but I don't have time today. So I'm just going to, if I were with you again in person, I would show you this simple exercise and then ask you guys, see what you think. But a horse is tied to a 2-foot rope and there's a bale of hay 15 feet away. Yet the horse is able to eat from the bale of hay. Well, what you do not see in this picture is actually the reason. You might see the horse tied to the rope, but the rope is just loosely wrapped around the bar. So the horse can obviously walk away and the rope will fall off. Example of what you do not see really being more important than what you do see. Compassion is a verb, it needs to be practiced and unfortunately taught. Unfortunately, it has to be practiced for us to be better at it and to improve our emotional intelligence. Now, again, if I were doing a training, I would go into this in a deep dive. But if you want to take a screenshot of this, because I know I only have 10 minutes, simple things to do to interact with people struggling with or without invisible disabilities, right? So again, if you want to take a screenshot of that, go for it. This obviously is just all educational from my lived experience. Now, I may have a disability, but a few years ago, I refused to let my disability have me, even though it used to have me, right? Even though it used to have me every single second of every day. But I'll be damned if my disability will be the death of me. And even then, it really won't be my disability. It will be the external ignorance, the societal ignorance of my disabilities. Me always having to explain my actions just because they're invisible, being misunderstood just because you can't see what I'm struggling with in my mind. And then I'll leave you with a food for thought, right? And again, I wish I had more time because I'm immensely passionate about this subject. Food for thought. Good and bad apples permeate throughout our criminal justice system, but the roots of inequality, oppression, and inequity run deep. The tree is rotten. And what do you do with a rotten tree? You uproot it. Now, I'll let you all personally define what that means to you. But we're not just talking about cops here. We're talking about lawyers. We're talking about judges. We're talking about COs, correctional and parole officers. Every aspect of the criminal justice system. from prior to the arrest, prior to being pulled over, prior to arrest, post-arrest, pre-trial, post-trial, sentencing. Every aspect needs to be dealt with, not just police. So I thank you all for this time. I wish I had more time, but if you would like to reach out to me, because I do a lot of trainings on this, again, feel free to contact me at theautisticpoet.com, and I will throw it back to Jesse. And again, I really appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day to join this very important session.
In Pennsylvania, several counties have on their own initiative launched ride-along programs where they actually have social workers ride along with the police to certain calls. The social workers will actually screen the calls and make an assessment as to whether it would be more appropriate for them to handle the call than the law enforcement. It's been hugely successful. And several other police departments are looking into doing that as well.
And I'll I guess add on to the or comment on the social worker initiatives that they're rolling out across the country. I for one, I don't feel any comfort in that from coming from the lived experience of so many close calls with police. There's one social worker and 3 cops. The cops are going to override the social worker because they're there to protect people, including a social worker. So if I come across as violent, even if the social worker does take the necessary steps, it goes back to the cops again. They're the ones in positions of power. And that's where all the deaths and unfortunate incidents occurs, from positions of power. The social worker, unfortunately, maybe they should be in a more of a position of power. They don't have that, especially if they're surrounded by more than one cop, right? And then there's a question about not only training, first responders and the criminal justice system and different aspects of that, but also the police training individuals with disabilities on how to interact with them. And that's, a brilliant point. I've never really thought long and hard about how I would interact with a police officer if I did get arrested. Why would I ever get arrested? I've never broken a law, so I've never gotten that far. And I need to learn, because I just watched a miniseries the other day, and it really, with autism, I like to see the good in people. I trust people too easily, especially people in positions of authority. As much as I'm, scared of cops in a certain situation, if they're in a position of authority, I'm going to trust them. That's my nature. And people with autism specifically can be manipulated. And so if I ever were to get wrongly arrested, I could, they could get stuff out of me that might not be true. And so to train individuals with disabilities on how to handle the process as well is instrumental.
This was asked in the Q&A. Is there any existing data regarding the benefits or drawbacks in relation to a disability symbol identifier on a person's identification? This person's curious if a voluntary symbol supports an increase in positive interactions with law enforcement. Second part of the question, also curious if there have been unintended consequences, such as further penalties if a person chooses not to utilize the disability symbol identifier, especially as they work their way through the criminal justice system.
I'll answer, and I'm not sure how much time we have, so I'll just answer the first question is, I would have to think about if I would want to be identified on like my license with a disability sticker, because that's not who I am. It's just a part of who I am. But at the same time, if I did choose to have that, I would still have to somehow show that to the officer. And as I described some of my, meltdowns and panic attacks, I'm incapable of really doing anything other than just getting through that mental pain and agony. So even I wouldn't even be able to show them my ID. I wouldn't be able to get to that point. So there needs to be, again, something where the person that they are called to, the police, that if they're really like incapacitated, maybe train the police to look for the wallet. I don't know. But again, it's just there needs to be a bridge before that, because even if I had that sticker, I'd still have to somehow show them my ID.
And we have a question from Becca. You are allowed to unmute, ma'am.
Hi, I've got a question. Um, I'm not sure if what I put in the chat was I I thought of it as people were talking, and I put in the chat all police departments, no matter if it should be stated in the in the in all police departments of the United States. People with disabilities have a voice, and I every day there's a shooting somewhere, and I can't watch any of the news anymore because that gets me going. And what I feel is everyone should have an opportunity to get some assistance based on the police department. They should have somebody go with the police to a person's home or however they have it, and if they show a sign of a disability like cerebral palsy or autism, we have a hard time communicating, as well as maybe physical harm. We don't want physical harm anywhere, but it always happens. Can somebody help me with that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Becca. This is Russell. And I mean, yeah, there has to be greater awareness. You're absolutely right. Greater awareness, greater compassion, and, compassion. Just basically the literal definition of compassion, it means in Latin to suffer with, just basically being there for an individual during a difficult time. Now, I also quickly want to just bring up police officers in America. I'm not sure if we can if you ask 10 people what a police officer's job is, you probably get 10 different answers. And I think we need to do a better job of defining what a police officer's job and role is within the police department, right? And we also need to do better screening, because I always say you should be a police officer because you want to protect the good guys. You should not be a police officer if what you want to do is catch the bad guys, because that means you're in it for, the rush. You want to catch people. And that's all well and nice, but let's focus on protecting, right? Protect. Because too often, whether it's self-defense or just an errant bullet, or it's not self-defense and it's murder, police officers, they're not given the tools and resources to protect. Let's remember that word, protect. Protect and serve.
Okay, thank you, Russell. I think that about wraps up the amount of time that we have. I really want to thank you all for joining us today.